Hello and welcome to this film for Maya and Co. And I am joined by the most wonderful human being. His name is Clive Hill. Um, I'm honored to have him on this recording, and even more excited because he's local to me. We are both Midlands folks, and he's going to be talking to us about careers in schools and throughout the curriculum. Clive, you have had a fascinating journey to becoming a teacher. Can you talk us through how you got to that space?
Yeah, so it's a bit different to most people, as I should imagine. Back in 1993, my head teacher lied to my parents and told them that because I was a very late August baby and I didn't start school until the Easter, I had to stop it. I had to at least finish so many terms in school. So my parents agreed that I was able to stay at school for sixth form rather than going and getting a job. I'd got an E for English language. And I know as an English teacher, you probably sat there with your head in your
No
hand.
judgment here.
Um, I resat English language. I did A-level physics, maths, and design technology. Following year, I got an A in English language, completely different teacher, transformed English for me. And with some advice from my form tutor, I'd had the same form tutor for 3 years.
Yeah.
And he said to me that probably the best thing I could do was get out of home, and then I'd be able to go on and go and thrive with what I wanted to do. And he knew that I wanted to join the army. Initially, it was the idea was to go and become an officer. And I then just he said, yeah, do you know what? I don't think you're really officer material. You'd make a really good regimental sergeant major. Why don't you join up as another rank? And it was his way of basically saying to me, pre-safeguarding, get away from home and go and enjoy your life. And that's what I did. So I quit my A levels about 18 months into doing my A levels, and accepted an apprenticeship with the British Army as an electrical mechanical engineer. So 2 years of an apprenticeship, and serving. I did 3.5 years in Germany. I served in the Balkans, and in 2001. I decided that I wanted to make a bit of a change. I wanted to come back to the UK because I'd been living out there, living on the continent, um, and that I didn't want to be completely institutionalized, which can happen a lot with the army. So I decided that I was going to come home. I moved into logistics management. I did a qualification that qualified me to run and hold the operator's license for a transport company. So in education, it's probably your equivalent of doing your NPQ HT. So did that qualification, came out, went into logistics management at a company just outside Heathrow. My parents were living down in Slough at the time, and I've moved back to family. From there, I went from leading large teams and project management, became an operations manager within 4 years, and I hit a glass ceiling. Unless I had thousands of pounds to invest in a company, that's as far as I was going to go, as running a company for somebody else, and it would be me that could potentially go to prison if things went wrong. Um, I enjoyed it. I loved the job. I was able to get the best out of my teams. Being bringing the people-centered leadership from the army into a sector that was still arguably in the 1980s at best with some organisations. I took in personal development and getting so taking my drivers and finding them extra qualifications and diversifying their skill sets so they felt a sense of achievement. And then in 2011, I had quite a tragic thing happen within the armed forces community. And my mentor had taken his own life after having PTSD.
Okay.
And that really hit home what I was missing from my life, and that sort of giving back to a community and having a real sense of purpose in what I was doing. I was good at my job, but it wasn't really a challenge anymore. So I had a conversation with a friend at the Army versus Navy rugby match. I'd had a couple of beers, if I'm honest, and his suggestion was, well, "Why don't you become a teacher? We could, because he works for the DFE."
Yeah.
And he said, we could really do with having people like you in the classroom. And I laughed because there was a couple of barriers. First one being I hated school, and the second one being I didn't have a degree.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he was quite canny. You can tell he got a degree in psychology because he then spent probably the next 18 months sending me information through about routes into education, how I could finance myself go to university, routes into teaching. Yeah, every route he could possibly think of, he was sending me information through on. Every time I meet him at a rugby match up at London Scottish, we have a conversation about, you really need to get into the classroom. And I ran out of excuses. I couldn't put off doing something I really wanted to do. And it was after having a conversation with my friend's son, who'd gone completely off the rails, been sent back from Germany to the UK, nearly got permanently excluded from school and sent to an AP unit. And he said to me one night about 1 o'clock in the morning, "Do you know what? You just get it. I wish my teachers were like you." And it was that point I couldn't say no anymore. I knew I had to go and do something about it. So I went into work. I didn't really have anything to go to. It was a complete leap of faith. And I handed in my notice, handed my keys, and so I'm off. I'm leaving. Here's my notice period. I'm going off. I'm going to go become a teacher. And they thought I was mad. My friends that I'd served in the army with thought I was mad.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyone that knew me just thought it was the riskiest thing that I'd ever done.
Yeah.
And it paid off. I went to college, and I think that was probably the most nerve-wracking interview. So 2013, going into a college, having to sit in an assessment to see whether I could get onto an access to HE course
Right.
and find out whether they would let me have a place based on the fact that I wanted to go and teach secondary school science.
Yeah.
And they ripped my hand off. And I think that was probably the most nerve-wracking, but the most pivotal moment in my life.
Yeah.
So 2014, because it's a year-long course. In the January 2014, Tough Young Teachers came out.
Yep.
And I can remember sitting there watching that and looking at the challenges that they had, the fact that everybody was incredibly well spoken compared to little old me. And I thought, you know what? First off, they could do with more working class people going into the classroom.
Right.
Second off, that's the route that I need to go and take, because I wanted to make sure that I could get myself into the schools where I'd be able to have the most impact.
Yeah. And
So,
just for people who don't know, Tough Young Teachers profiled 3 Teach First teachers going through the system, going through their qualification year.
yeah, so 2014, in the September, I started at Royal Holloway, did my biology degree. Got involved with Teach First very, very quickly. It wasn't the offer of the pizzas at the meetings. Ended up becoming a brand manager for 2 years on campus. Got a place on the leadership development program, and in 2017, I completely booked the trend for our cohorts, and being in somebody that was not quite a career changer, not quite an undergraduate. So I went. I was asked where I wanted to go. You place your different areas in your category of 10 that you remember from doing that.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, do you know what? I'm going to move to the region where the regiment I was attached to in the army was based up in the East Midlands. So I had to pick a postcode where I was going to be living. So I gave them the Asda in Long Eaton's postcode, because it was slap bang in the middle of Derby and Nottingham.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I know it well.
Yeah, my wife's a midwife, so she was looking at hospitals up this way. She found herself a role in Mansfield, and we moved up lock, stock, and barrel. Started a new life in the East Midlands, and we've not looked back since, to be honest.
I honestly, listening to all of that, there are people who fall into teaching. You did the opposite of falling into teaching. You grabbed every opportunity that you could in order to do something that was worthwhile to you, and every barrier that you could have faced was there. And I guess part of what I'm hearing is that because you had to navigate that field so meticulously, exams, assessments, interviews, jobs, part-time jobs while you waited for the next thing, you were perfectly placed to talk to young people about careers. Did you always want to be involved in careers education, or is that something that came about later more organically?
Um, I did 2 years on the development program,
Mm.
and it was moving to my second school where, I mean, everybody from the onset, ex-military, oh, this guy's going to be behaviour and standards. That's the route he's going to go. He's going to go pastoral. He's really good with the kids. He gets the kids in line. But he's not. I wasn't somebody that would bully the kids into doing what we want them to do. I'd get them to understand why we want them to do it.
Yeah.
Um, and I really wanted to book against that. It's like, yeah, do you know what? I don't want to be seen as a one-trick pony. I don't want to be typecast because of what I've done before.
Mhm.
So I wanted to go into teaching and learning,
Yeah.
and that's where my real passion lay. Is, yeah, I did just so much extra reading around it, honed my practice, um, and I ended up getting involved in careers education because of my head of department at my second school. She was on SLT, and she is one of her roles. She looked after careers,
Mm.
and she said to me, "You've done something outside of education, and we don't get that a lot. Would you like to look after careers help me look after careers for the school?" And I thought, well, this is a good way for me to show, but to transfer some of the leadership I've done outside, bring it into education. And I was the school part paid for my master's degree, so I did my top up at the end of my postgraduate diploma, and we looked at an area that would be really beneficial. So I thought I'll do something around careers. I think this will work quite well. I then put forward the idea that we would look at the efficacy of careers provision in areas of social deprivation. I'm not going to lie, it's the driest topic that anybody's ever looked at for a master's degree.
Yeah.
I've read the Ofsted reports of over 290 schools in East Midlands and Yorkshire and the Humber. Looked for positive mentions of careers within those frameworks, and then narrowed it down to another 60 or so schools that I then went and looked at their careers policy online, all of their programs, weighed it up against the Gatsby benchmarks and the Careers Development Institute's framework to look at what was effective, what people did do, what people weren't doing,
Yeah.
so that I
Yeah.
could really hone into what would make a perfect careers model, so to speak,
Mhm.
for a school in the sort of areas that we're teaching in the East Midlands.
Yeah. So the
Um,
idea, just sorry to interrupt,
well,
the idea of, this driver you had towards careers, it feels like again that was a step that you perhaps didn't necessarily always feel passionate about, but you are passionate about now.
oh, massively so. I think through doing the masters, I was able to see that it wasn't just something that needed to be effective in the school that I taught in or dealing with individuals. Most of my pastoral conversations I'd have with a student would be very much based around what do you want to do when you leave school? So that I could then relate as to why throwing a chair across a classroom wouldn't be something you could get away with in the workplace. And we needed to be thinking a bit further down the line. And I think this is something that sort of that approach linked back to three values that I was given in the army.
Mm.
And so our commanding officer of the Queen's Royal Lancers ended up becoming the commandant of Royal Military Academy in Sandhurst. So all of the ethos behind the Centre of Army Leadership stems from the work that he's done. And so three lessons we had that used to be posted in our Part 1 orders every single day were do as you ought, not as you want, think to the finish, and then all of one company. And that's been a real driver for me going through and
Yeah.
everything that I've looked at. So when dealing with the kids, it's like, well, it's not always about doing what you want. It's about doing what you should be doing. I can't, I don't know who the phrase is attributed to. I think it's a bit of one from the Bible, but essentially, right is right when nobody's watching.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's getting students to understand the benefits of doing the right thing in school is actually doing the right thing by them as individuals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then when doing the research, I got to notice that when we're looking at careers provision in areas of social deprivation or careers provision as a whole,
Mm.
all of the research points to schools or individuals, sorry, that are experiencing social disadvantage.
Mhm.
So it's like if you've got when you've got pupil premium students, you should deliver this.
Right.
But
Okay.
it doesn't look, and that, I mean that might work really well if you're in inner city London, where you've got opportunities surrounding you. So when you look at the data for social deprivation, you do have pockets of social deprivation in London, but the social mobility within those pockets is actually quite high because students are surrounded by affluence. They're surrounded by businesses where they can go and visit, and they do a lot of outreach work. But if you come into areas like the East Midlands and Yorkshire and Humber, where there's been decades of no investment from central government, the communities feel quite isolated,
Yeah.
and nothing was being done about looking at, well, what do you do if your entire cohort is
Yeah.
effectively from social disadvantage, because you have to take a very different approach, and a lot of the recommendations could be scaled up.
Mm.
A lot of the literature looks at, and Teach First was quite just as bad as any other organisation for what they printed, of where they would leave it very open with what's a good, students should aspire to have a good job or a good career.
Right.
Never qualified what that meant.
Right.
And that was one of the big challenges through doing the research is, well, what is a good job? What is a good career? And I was in a position where I was able to boil it down,
Mm.
essentially to having a stable and fair income,
Hmm.
opportunities to grow and develop,
Yeah.
safe place of work, representation, or having a voice in the workplace, and that work-life balance. And I think that was the crux for me, and that's where that passion started to come from. Was actually, we need to change the way that we deliver careers
Yeah.
to students, so that we're able to essentially challenge some of the barriers that they face,
Yeah.
and change the way that careers is seen within an organization, within a school, as an organization, and its place within a framework.
Yeah, I mean, it's really fascinating hearing that because, people might not be familiar with the research around careers education. I do feel sometimes, like in schools, it's very much an add-on. It's very much and we provide the curriculum, and then we do careers as a one-off interview or that kind of thing. So having done all of this research, in your experience as somebody who had multiple careers in different directions, what are the elements of a good careers curriculum, and should it be a curriculum in schools?
I think probably the best thing for me to do is share a slide with you.
Yeah, go for it.
So there's four barriers that we've got with social deprivation and careers largely. We look at capability, we look at opportunity, motivation, and the structural barriers that are in place. And I think that any careers program that gets set up needs to be underpinned essentially by these four larger areas that we need to address.
Mhm.
Um, they are very, so you look at our capability, which I'll get onto on my next slide.
Yeah.
It's very much linked around whether the students have got the knowledge and whether the families have got the knowledge to be able to go and take on the opportunities, such as going to college open days, going to university open days. Are they in a position where, given the fact we may have carers, we may have, so they may be caring for an ill adult,
Yeah.
they may be caring for younger siblings, they may be responsible for siblings after school while parents are still at work. So all of these factors come under capability.
Right. Okay.
We look at our opportunities, and in areas like ours, in the East Mids, it's are they given those opportunities to be able to network with employers?
Right.
Quite often they're going to be limited based on parental experience. Now, and I think if you compare, as I was saying earlier about, say, London, where you've got pockets of social deprivation, the opportunities to network are much, much higher.
Yeah. Yeah.
Therefore, we need to look at generating those opportunities, and for us to be able to make sure that the students have equitable access to those opportunities. Online, there's a lot of work being done for online work experience, but it's never the same. And there's a lot of gatekeeping around those opportunities that students like the cohorts I teach never get to have, because if you want to go and get a role in a large accountancy firm or in a large law firm or in a doctor's surgery or with a vet, you have to have those connections, you have to have those inroads, and a lot of the time my students are able to access that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Motivations, they vary, and I'll discuss that in a second. And then you've got structural barriers as to what's already in place and what's being done. And one of the big areas I talk around on here is where we always rightfully look at equitable access into careers for demographics across the board. We don't have enough LGBT representation in STEM, for example. We don't have enough women in STEM. But when we look at our global majority groups in STEM, quite often we don't look at the data correctly. Where I've been in talks where people remove medicine, for example, which will straight away remove some ethnic groups, and then we'll remove trades, which removes the white working class, and we just look at science careers, which does leave you largely with white, rich, middle class men. But when we're looking at STEM as a broad spectrum, we're not really, when we look at some of this data, including midwives and nurses. We don't address the fact that we don't have enough male midwives because it's seen as an area that isn't necessarily a concern, but we would focus on getting more people into another career pathway. So I think there's structural barriers there for when we look at our lowest achieving the demographics for not least likely to go on to university, most likely to drop out, white working class boys. And I think that leaves them very vulnerable to either picking up mediocre career choices or being opened up to questionable choices from a pastoral perspective, because it's very easy for you look at Prevent, for certain groups to be able to target these lads with a, we know where you're coming from, we know what it's about, come and join us. I mean, you're Andrew Tates of the world. So I think careers provision feeds into pastoral very, very naturally. So if I just move on to that next slide.
Yeah, go for it.
When we're looking at capability, and this is how it moves into the pastoral framework, it's that, as I said, careers taking a precedence, so sort of basic needs taking precedence over career support. So students needing to earn money straight off the bat. Position that I was in as at 16, if my parents wanted me to go out and go and earn rather than me staying in school. So there's pressures from various aspects within our lives. And the complexity of post-16 choices, the move away from BTECs to T-levels, and that's caught a few students out this year. As my current year 11 cohort, they've applied for their level 3 courses, and the goalposts have been moved. They need to go onto a T-level course. The colleges believe in that the academic rigor of a T-level is more than it was for a BTEC. So they're putting them on for another year of being able to up their biology knowledge and to prepare themselves almost. It's like a foundation year for a T-level. And so it's trying to help students navigate those choices and make sure that they understand that not one route is always going to be the right route to go through. Nursing's one that always crops up. Where students think they have to go and do A-levels to go on to university to go and do the degree, or physiotherapy, where they think they have to do A-level biology, whereas actually A-level PE is much more applicable for university courses. So
Okay.
it's getting them to understand that, that it's very, very challenging because there's a lot of information, there's a lot of courses out there,
Yeah.
and it's very domain specific knowledge. I mean, it's something I'm going to touch it later on. Um, we then look at our opportunities. The social networks are really challenging.
Mm,
So if my parents, for example, HGV driver and a school dinner lady,
mm,
so social networks for me, they didn't exist. Me wanting to join the armed forces was something that came from me being in the cadets, really.
mm.
Um, and then moving out of the armed forces, I moved into logistics, which was a sector that I knew because I had connections based on the fact my dad was a truck driver.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the first business I moved into was a competitor of the organisation my dad worked for, but I knew the industry really, really well. So I can see how those social networks are so important. I try to make sure we branch those out as wide as we possibly can in school now. Again, just having a look at those that complexity of those post 16 choices and what is available for them. We look at our motivation. A lot of students then they come into secondary, primary are very good at building them up. You can be whatever you want to be. Coming to secondary in year 7, I do my first assembly. I start to talk to students, and I've got probably 50 professional footballers in the classroom. I've got doctors, I've got vets,
Yeah.
I've got professional gamers, TikTokers, YouTubers, and all
Yeah.
sorts. Um, when we then move further through the school, I think the reality of how tough it is and that you need to work to get qualifications means that without having a drip effect,
Mm.
what often happens in schools is they get to year 11, they've not really had anything to do with careers up until this point, and then everybody firefights in year 11 in
Yeah.
schools.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you've shifted your challenging behaviours through with some students. You've kept them on all the way through to year 11, and yet you get to a point of where they don't really know what they want to do. A lot of you, even if you're more gifted and talented students, they don't know what they want to do. And you've probably spent year 10 and year 11 telling your students in lower sets that if they're getting a grade below a grade 4, that they're failing the subject.
Yeah.
So that really hits their career self-efficacy. They actually they don't know what they can go on and go and do, and they grasp at whatever they can possibly get at college.
Um,
And then colleges will give them their list of their criteria as to what's needed for a course. And you'll know from your time in the classroom, they come back and they go, I only need English and maths.
yeah.
Probably with you is that I only need English language. I don't need English lit.
Yeah.
So it's getting them to actually realize the benefits of having as many qualifications as possible.
Yeah.
Um, we've got a battle, and I'll put both of these up between your extrinsic motivation and the intrinsic motivation in schools. And we walk this, it's a beautiful tightrope from my perspective anyway, of where on one side of our tightrope, we've got this utilitarian careers side of things, of where you need to go and study science. I'll use my own subject. You've got to study science because if you want to become an engineer or a car mechanic or an electrician, you've got to have that as an underpinning subject to help you.
The practical. Yeah.
Yeah, that practical need, as opposed to then we go on to that panacea of education, of that love of our subject and the fact that
Yeah.
they really want to go and study something in particular. And that's that intrinsic motivation that's there. And I believe that careers is able to do both at the same time, and we're able to move this extrinsic motivation over to an intrinsic motivation over time if we start early enough with the subjects and getting them to understand it. But to do that, we've got to challenge some of our perceptions as teachers and some of our own biases. That takes us on to how we target our behaviour. So it's linked to a student's self-worth. The student feels that they've got worth and they're valued and they're part of a community and they've got a sense of belonging where they are, and they're succeeding, then their behaviour is better in school because they can see a point of being there. we then again we get back to that clarity of post 16 choices again. Is it, if you get in early enough with it, with that support and that advice for students, they know where they're going. And because they know where they're going, they've got a goal to end to. They're thinking to the finish.
Mm.
So that do as you ought, not as you want, is linked up to thinking through to the finish. What is your end goal? What do you really want to do? And this is how we're going to help you get there.
Yeah.
And then we acknowledge their successes, and their successes could be something as simple as you taking those micro steps from a student that's coming to us, and we're expecting them to end up leaving at the end of the school year on a grade 3 in English and maths, and they're currently on a grade 2, and it's like, if we tweak this, if we tweak that, we can get you up to a grade 3. That'll open up a level 2 course for you, and you can then go on to go and do what you want to do. And you acknowledge all those little successes and how they're developing. You look at their employability skills. The kid that sat at the back of your classroom that was a grade 9 student but didn't know how to talk and couldn't articulate what they wanted to say verbally, and you're encouraging them to answer questions in lessons. These are employability skills that we need to praise, and we need to celebrate with them as well, because employers are looking for those. And then we also look at their athletes on sports day. So everyone needs to have that sense of belonging and achievement in school. And I think that using that the careers is with weaving it within that pastoral framework really helps give them a sense of where they should be. Where they should be is school, and why they should be there.
Yeah, I love this as a framework. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it before, and thank you for putting your references on there as well. Um, but this feels like a really research-based, evidence-led curriculum model for the curriculum for careers rather. I do think that many classroom teachers, through no fault of their own, of course, assume that this work is for the careers coordinator or for the head of year 11 or for the head of year 13. Um, how can the average teacher provide support under this framework? What do they need to do?
I think first and foremost, challenge your own perceptions.
Mm.
Um, I think I'm in a very fortunate position where going to university at 37 meant I spent a big proportion of my life in a working class household.
Yeah.
Um, and so going to uni later in life, I can really see how that changed everything for me.
Okay.
I've been very reluctant to say that I'm no longer a working class. I'd say, as Jason Manford uses the phrase, I'm muddle class.
Yeah.
I sit somewhere in between, and I think that really plays into it. Is it just acknowledging your own biases? So when we talk about aspirational careers,
Mm.
I think we should consider what it is that's aspirational. For me as a teacher now, I think an aspiration, as soon as I start to think as an aspirational career, it's what's better than a teacher?
Yeah.
Graduate career, could it be? Because I've got a real value for education, for education's sake, and the benefits that can bring, and how university has made job security,
Mhm.
the opportunity so much wider for me.
Yeah.
But if I change my lens and I look at things through pre-university, Clive, um, when I've got a student in front of me that's got mum and dad have never worked,
Yeah.
gran and granddad have not worked since they closed the pits, and they say to me, I want to go and get a job in Tesco's as a manager. That's an aspirational career,
Yeah.
because not only are they looking at, they want a job, they want to go into leadership, they want to go into management. And we need to celebrate that. And it's a common one that I get in assemblies where I ask kids what they want to do, and you'll always have that. You'll always have somebody who wants to make a wisecrack of, "I'm going to go work in Aldi," and then I point out how much they get paid on the Aldi management scheme
Yeah.
and the company car they get, and all of a sudden. working at Aldi's not so much of a joke anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the first thing that classroom teachers can do is just challenge what you think is going to be an aspirational career.
Yeah. I do think I think I'm guilty of it, as I've talked to students about getting results, about getting that grade 4 or above, or the CD borderline as it was. And kids would say, I don't need to. And I think one of my responses back in the day was very much, well, you don't want to end up working at McDonald's. And this idea that, for me, there's a real bias in that. There's a career path in McDonald's. I'm not suggesting they stay as a server for their whole time
Mhm.
there. But I can feel my own prejudices in that. And my own lens of having been university educated and not having done very many other things. Do you think the teachers really suffer from um, just having that university lens?
I think they can do, and I think that only having a university lens doesn't lend itself very well to delivering on careers.
Right.
That's another challenge to pick up probably later, um, because there is so much out there.
Yeah.
Apprenticeships. I'm really glad to see. Not only was it something that the Conservative government was looking at previously, but the current Labour government, that they're really wanting to look at apprenticeships as being that the raising that level of what an apprenticeship is within society, and then looking at how we can put more onus onto employers to take responsibility for developing what we as I say to students, the product that we make at a school is them, and making sure that they are as marketable as they possibly can be to employers.
Yeah.
So, but employers have got a role in taking something that we've started with, and they then need to continue that and move that on.
Absolutely. I'm glad you started talking about the government because I was going to get onto that. Now it's a messy field at the moment. I think any kind of transition of power will show uh, fractures in policy that has gone before and potential policy that's coming up. Can you give us some sort of clue as to what aspects of government policy we should know about, what's on the radar, what's on the horizon when it comes to careers?
Um, I think probably with that bit of change, because there's a lot up in the air.
Yeah,
I think as teachers, where we've had so much around the knowledge rich curriculum, which I really do buy into, I think it's incredibly important. I think that we need to keep that. There's been so much work gone into it over the last 14 years. I mean, I've only been teaching now 7, but I can really see the benefits that we're not robbing students of opportunities for deeper understanding and for that cultural capital. I don't think we need to be running scared when we talk about oracy and we talk about skills. Because, as an English teacher, you know full well, oracy is that gateway for literacy. So if it's,
yeah,
and I
absolutely.
use that a lot in my lessons of where I get students to speak like a scientist,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then so we correct the language that's being used, and I then get them to write that down.
Mm.
And so we do oracy in lessons all the time. But the school that I'm with at the moment, we've now become so Voice 21 oracy. We're now a centre of excellence for them. I've been part of that journey for the last 2 years, and our careers curriculum relies heavily on using oracy as a vehicle to drive those discussions and to get that understanding with students.
That is powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes a difference when employers come into your school
Mm.
and they tell you that your students stand out amongst all of the secondary schools that they engage with in the local area because they are so articulate, well spoken, can have a conversation with a stranger.
Yeah.
You know that that's powerful, and we don't spend lots of time on oracy in lessons. It's just something
Mm.
that's already woven into them the same way that I've not really changed the way that I deliver my practice. It's just a little bit more deliberate of where I might put an oracy task on the board, or I might go, okay, so here's a question for you guys. I want you to discuss with your partner, and we're gonna share that, and we move those arguments around. We've got some connective phrases that as a teacher I'll use to facilitate that conversation. It's really really effective. And then something that I've worked on this year, and we're moving through as one of the focuses for me within careers next year, is to get get our employability skills
Mm.
into the curriculum, or
Right.
more
Okay.
embedded within the curriculum.
Is this
So,
something the government was talking about, or is this something that's come from you?
this is it's something the government's spoken about, where they're looking at employability skills,
Mhm.
and they're talking about the skills to be able to succeed in education.
Right. Okay.
And I think that we don't need to be running scared from that.
Okay.
So what I've done is I've taken the employability skills, and because part of Gatsby, we're supposed to ensure that our curriculum, sorry, careers is woven into our curriculum.
Yeah.
So I'm using employability skills as that golden thread that's woven through curriculum.
Right. Okay.
So if you think about it, the eight employability skills that I'm using, so listening, speaking, problem solving, creativity, staying positive, aiming high, leadership, and teamwork.
Okay.
So they're all things that we do in
Mhm.
schools every single year. And I can remember Izzy Garbett doing a speech in the youth parliament,
Yeah.
saying how she could recite the quadratic formula, but she wasn't prepared on how to do a whole list of all these employability skills. And you're doing some public speaking at the moment. You haven't just picked that up from nowhere.
Yeah.
Um, and so the irony of that speech wasn't lost on me. And it's because we don't tell the kids and the parents and the employers, this is what we do.
Yeah.
And by changing that, I think that's going to make the difference within schools. Is it? So I don't think we should be running scared from those. But I think that if we look at what the government's proposing at the moment, that oracy and those employability skills, there's ways to put these into your curriculum where it is simply a case, for us, is we're writing, departments write an employability skills impact statement.
Right.
They say in our subject, we will develop these employability skills through doing this,
Right.
and
Okay.
making it really clear. It's posted on the school website. Employers get to see it. Parents get to see it when they when we're delivering options subjects. These are the things that we tell parents that they're going to gain. So if I choose a subject that probably has a lower take up, say religious studies, what employability skills are we looking for? Because every year, year nine get together, they take their options, and this year was a real eye opener for me. 2 years into my role at the school I'm at, and being able to have a queue of parents wanting to come to me.
Yeah.
What subjects do I need to do? Like, well, what are you looking at? And they'll say, I use really common one was wanting to go into any of the construction trades. And
Right.
it was, I want to go and do DT and I want to do engineering. So why do you want to do both of those? And you'd have dad say, well, he's got to do those if you want, because he wants to be a bricklayer. So neither of those subjects got anything to do with bricklaying. What subjects do you like to do? And the kid will go, well, I don't know, say drama and geography. Oh, well, they're your options then. So why are you picking subjects you think are going to be related?
Mm.
Pick the subjects you love, because English, maths, science are your core.
Yeah.
If we take a look, I'd open up the local college websites. If you look at the subjects that you need to go and do these, you need to have English, maths, plus two other GCSEs and subjects. And employers want to see that you're doing subjects that you love and that
Yeah.
you're going to get good grades in.
Yeah. And it was something, I certainly remember from my own conversations when I was at school, which was, you can do subjects that are geared towards a career, and you can do those and do those well if you have that opportunity. Or you could do something that you love. And, those conversations have always been part of that careers conundrum. Um, and quite often I find that those facilitating, do this because it will get you into a job conversations often come from parents rather than children. I wanted to do our A level and was very much told, no, you're not doing that. So, I had done really well at art GCSE, and I loved it.
Well,
Uh,
medicine's a prime example of where,
yeah,
so yes, take triple science because it makes that jump to A level much easier. But then it'll be, well, which do I take? Do I take history? Do I take geography? Do I take RE? I've got another subject. What do I take? Not whatever you want to take. They want to see you rounded. They want to see you successful. So pick the subjects you enjoy the most. And
absolutely.
I think that that's probably the core thing to take away. So I can remember my parents giving me the same, having those same conversations with me. But it comes from a good place,
Mm.
but the information is largely based on own biases. Of
Oh,
you need to go and do this subject because I know it's going to get you to here, and it's like, well, do you know it's going to get you there? And our careers program sort of addresses that because there's a lot of information in our booklets that they get, but they
yeah.
take them home and they're used to be able to. It's not only is it used as a program within school, it's used to help facilitate those conversations at home for parents to be able to talk about them.
And that is so important because that misinformation just feeds into those conversations, and trying to combat that is one of the hardest things, I think. So let's talk about best practice and impact. You've been doing this for a while. Where have you seen best practice? Where have you seen impact?
Um, Best practice. I've seen some really bad practice.
You could talk about that if you like.
I've come across a school in an area of social deprivation that I used to live in as a kid that charges the kids to do work experience.
Charges them.
Yeah, they have to pay the costs that it's going to cost to go and have the employer checked out,
Wow.
which kind of goes against everything that you can think about. We're just throwing another structural barrier up for those kids.
Unbelievable.
Um, so yeah, I've seen some good practice in schools where they really value their careers lead as a role. So they get 50 up to 50% off timetable to drive careers within a school because careers can be transformational for it, not only just for a school, but for a community. I've seen schools where the one of the assistant heads is given it as another bolt on to one of their roles where they already don't have enough time to do stuff. So they go and buy in a program, or they will go and they'll go and use one of the large platforms. I'm trying not to use names, but
Yeah,
they'll
we won't
yeah,
mention them.
they'll use a large platform and think that that's going to be okay for their kids.
Mm.
Now, some of these large platforms, there's stuff on these large platforms that are absolutely amazing resources.
Mm.
But if they're not tailored for your community, what are you actually addressing? The needs of me in Nottinghamshire compared to if I only go 25 miles down the road into inner city Nottingham are completely different.
Yeah,
And I think that's where best practice lies. It's got to be by the community for the community. So using student voice, using parent voice, and using employer voice
yeah, yeah,
is really, really powerful. You've got to get those three stakeholders in straight away. Teacher voice is going to be very important because most often it will be teachers that will end up delivering this for you. So in our setup, it's delivered within a tutorial. So if you haven't got teachers on board or teachers passing on their advice about anywhere that they've struggled delivering it because they don't have the domain specific knowledge or enough background information to
yeah,
be able to deliver, that's got to be taken into account. It's got to address the barriers that the school has,
yeah,
and I strongly believe it should form part of the pastoral offer that a school provides.
yeah.
That's something that's absolutely critical, I think.
I think
Uh,
that's, I mean, really, really wise words, when you think about that example of, an assistant head getting it as the fourth thing on their job description. I've seen that happen and I've seen how it falls by the wayside, and it becomes an exercise in work experience coordination as opposed to this really holistic approach that is so centered on the needs of the community and those individual children. And I can hear what you're saying around that best practice being take away those barriers, give the teachers that training time, and the time for consultation where they don't have the domain specific knowledge. Um, and to really consider how it fits in that pastoral structure. I had the last school I worked in had a full-time careers coordinator, and she was absolutely amazing, still is. And I'd never seen that before. And it was just transformational in what the children got. So maybe thinking about elevating that role. Uh,
There's challenges inherent with doing that as well.
yeah,
So careers development professionals sign up to a code of practice.
right.
And the code of practice is that all the information they give the kids is going to be independent,
Yeah,
and the kids have to make their own minds up. So I've got a careers advisor that works for me. She's absolutely amazing. I've had two working with me this year, and both are absolutely fantastic.
yeah,
They will say to a student, you're currently getting grade 4s and 5s in your subjects, and you want to become a vet. Veterinary medicine is looking at A star, A star, A star for A level, and they'll look at your GCSEs and they'll be expecting you to get grade 9s. It's incredibly competitive. And then they will let the kid go away and figure out on their own that they're
yeah,
not going to get there.
yeah,
So I think while it's great having a careers coordinator, that so quite often you'll find schools will employ somebody who's a qualified careers advisor to do that role and will support with the admin side of things. I think the careers lead in a school, because they're two very different roles,
right.
needs to be the person that can have those really honest and frank conversations. And some of the conversations that have been passed on for me to have with students, as opposed to a teacher of a subject having that conversation, I think, and this is somewhere that teachers can also help.
Yeah, yeah,
Is to have those honest conversations. Would be saying to a student, I really believe in you. I think you can get on to be successful in something, but where you're looking and where you are now, we're not going to be able to
yeah,
bridge that gap. And a careers advisor, or quite often the careers coordinator would be that person, isn't able to have that conversation.
yeah.
And it's helped because I've been able to find alternative routes through. So I've students that will come to me and tell me that they want to be a criminal psychologist.
Mm, mm,
And we sit and have a whole conversation about criminal psychology and the employment opportunities afterwards of why they want to go and do it. And a student will say, I want to help people that are in mental health crises. So, yeah, I get that. That's really good. So you want to help and you want to care and you want to nurture people that are having a mental breakdown. They're like, yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. That's not a criminal psychologist. That's a mental health nurse.
yeah.
And all of a sudden, like,
Exceptions.
yeah, and they're like, really? And you're like, and you look at their grades, and you're okay. So you're in, so potentially they're in a set where they're only going to be taking foundation science.
Right.
You're going to get, so we can get you a grade 5 in science. You're going to need more than that to go to university to go and do criminal psychology, but I can get you into mental health nursing
Yeah.
and be able to have those really honest conversations where you help them. You're not telling them what they have to go and do, but you're a bit more direct with the options that may be available to
Yeah.
them based on the conversation you have. And that's such a delicate conversation to have.
Yeah. And I was thinking about this idea of, if you get it wrong, you
Mm.
crush that element of that child's motivation. You talked about motivation,
Yeah,
and there are pitfalls, the massive pitfalls in this.
you have got that. This is why it's got to be woven into pastoral. Yeah, the kids trust people that are involved in that sector of education.
Yeah.
Um, and so when you've got really good relationships with the kids,
Mm.
good relationships with the parents is critical in that as well. Then they know that you've got the kids' best interests at heart. And I think that is always really important. I've had conversations this year with students that are looking at, I've not applied to college because I want an apprenticeship. And so I've sat and explained to the student, I said, look, the apprenticeships are really, really competitive. You've not looked for an apprenticeship yet. You've got 3 weeks until you leave us. You need a plan. You've got to have a plan A, plan B, plan C. And I talk about this the whole way through. So that's from probably back end of year 7 all the way through to year 13. What is plan A? What's plan B? What's plan C? Because you are never going to find that things will run smoothly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll say to them, apply for college.
Yeah.
College can be your backup. College can be your plan B. That's not a problem. Apply for a college course that suits you in the area you want to go and do an apprenticeship.
Mm.
And then keep an eye out for an apprenticeship and keep applying. Because come results day, if you haven't got an apprenticeship, you've got a college place.
Yeah.
You're not then running around panicking on results day trying to get yourself onto a college course where they're all booked up.
Yeah.
And you'll end
Got
up
to
doing.
be a safety net, hasn't there? There's got
Yeah.
to be something. And I like that idea of, plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. I had to remember my alphabet then, very briefly. This people feel like, oh, year sevens are so young. Should we be having those conversations with year sevens? And I just think, well, actually, do we do we wait till the end of year 11? People have different ideas about when we can have these conversations, but if you've got a child who has a sense of where they're going, let them have the conversations, right?
Yeah. Well, careers education starts in primary, but it starts in nursery.
Yeah,
Early years foundation stage. I my daughter's 2.5.
yeah.
They posted on their parents group on Facebook that they'd all been to go to the local fire station to see the firemen. And I spoke to them and said, "You mean the firefighters?" And I've become that guy. And I was like, "No, you mean the firefighters?" And when you get nurses in, do you get male nurses in to come and speak to the
Yeah,
kids? And they're like, "No." I went, "Right." So the stereotypes that get so we've run a session on stereotypes. I've got a beautiful session that I do with our year sevens when we look at reproduction.
yeah,
And so what I do there is we've got to smash these stereotypes, and the earlier they're done, the better. That's a given. But the one that I deliver in biology is we get the whole of year 7 in. As I said before earlier, my wife's a midwife,
yeah.
so I get her into. So we sort of like team teach this in an assembly sort of setting. But she trained with one of the few male midwives in the country
Oh,
who
wow.
was also on One Born Every Minute,
Okay, right. That's
and
handy.
he's a big lad, ex-Navy, 6 foot tall. He refers to himself as a big ginger monster on the video. And I use that to talk about midwifery. I could pick any woman from across midwifery to talk about what the job's about, but I think actually picking him
Mm.
is really powerful because not only will it break down barriers for anybody wanting to go into that career path,
Yeah, yeah,
I think it also breaks down those expectations of women going into labour
yeah, yeah,
because he's there because you're there as a professional. I explain to them midwife has got nothing to do. The wife part has got nothing to do with your sex.
yeah, yeah,
It's the person who's the midwife. It's to do with it comes from old Germanic. Is a midwife. It's
yeah,
with woman, and
yeah,
that's the role. It's the person that's with the woman.
yeah, yeah.
So getting them to understand that you're a medical professional. People don't query about having a male gynecologist or an obstetrician. So why do we wonder about having a male midwife? So
I
I
mean,
love putting those spins on
yeah,
challenges.
absolutely, absolutely. And there's so many stereotypes, and it's really interesting to hear how you deal with it. I'm conscious that we are running out of time. And I've just learned so much. I don't think I've ever thought about careers in the way that you've explained it to me today. And so I'm really grateful for you sharing not just your own story, but also the story of how a school can really underpin everything with this kind of careers mentality. And it sounds like to me, if I've caught it all right, is that actually at the heart of this is just opening doors for individuals so that they can succeed. Um, and I'm just really grateful to you for taking the students of the East Midlands and giving them that opportunity. That's a wonderful accolade to add to your many other accolades. I just want to end actually by telling you my careers. My careers pathway started, I think it was at primary school, and I think there was one of the first computer programs which told you what you could be. And I put in all my likes and my dislikes, and you'll never guess what they told me that I should be. It wasn't teacher. Do you want to take a stab at it?
Um, I think that the usual one ends up coming to be a nursery worker.
Ah, no, it was more random than that. It told me I needed to be a gardener. Suffice to say that
Okay.
actually that didn't happen. I can't keep plants alive. So I think I'm hoping that careers education, I can see that careers education has come a long way since then. All that's left to do is say thank you, Clive. That was really, really interesting. And I'm sure all of the viewers are really grateful for you sharing your experience. So um, just, yeah, absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Benny.